Ukraine says it's pleased that diplomacy is still being pursued to diffuse tensions on the country's border after the US and Russian foreign ministers held out the prospect of further talks. Sergei Lavrov again insisted that Moscow had no plans to invade. Antony Blinken said America would respond severely if it did. The charity Save the Children says an airstrike by the Saudi-led coalition on a prison in Sada in Yemen has killed dozens of people and wounded many more. France's Constitutional Court has approved a new coronavirus vaccine pass, which will require people aged 16 and over to show proof of vaccination or a negative test to enter public places. And the first ships from New Zealand carrying vital aid supplies have arrived in Tonga following Saturday's huge volcanic eruption and tsunami.
Iran, Russia, and China begin joint naval exercises in the northern Indian Ocean aimed at increasing security, Iranian state television reports. In Beijing, immigration officials begin tight disease control measures in an area meant to receive visitors and competitors for the 2022 Winter Olympics. In South Korea, thousands of Buddhist monks gather in Seoul to protest what they say is religious discrimination by the government. And in Burkina Faso, the government defends its decision to block Facebook before a banned protest Saturday in Ouagadougou against insecurity.
Good Friday morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Right now on Morning News Now, 2 years later, a sobering milestone in America's fight against COVID. Thursday marked 2 years since the nation's first case was confirmed. Now, 69 million cases later, and despite vaccines and widespread testing, the U.S. is still struggling to overcome the virus. We have team coverage on the progress, the setbacks, plus the new efforts to stop the spread as we enter year 3 of the pandemic. A high-stakes meeting to avoid an all-out war this morning. New talks between U.S. and Russia following President Biden's grim prediction of a Russian invasion of Ukraine.
There is no doubt, let there be no doubt at all, that if Putin makes this choice, Russia will pay a heavy price.
The latest on the fallout, including reaction from Ukraine's president as tension rises along the Russia-Ukraine border. Rest in paradise. Breaking overnight, legendary rocker Meatloaf has died. The Grammy Award winner and celebrated actor being remembered this morning after 6 decades of success in entertainment. A look back at his career as the tributes pour in. And out of this world, a tale of 2 telescopes this morning as the game-changing James Webb Telescope heads closer to its destination. We look back on its predecessor, the Hubble, and the groundbreaking technology that led to some of NASA's most incredible discoveries.
Japan's Prime Minister Kishida Fumio has started an online summit meeting with U.S. President Joe Biden. Government sources say the 2 leaders are believed to have agreed on the creation of a framework for regular bilateral meetings involving senior officials in charge of foreign affairs and economic issues. Sources say Kishida and Biden are likely to have engaged in candid discussion on a wide range of matters, including security, the economy, climate change, and other global challenges. They're expected to have reaffirmed their commitment to further strengthening the Japan-U.S. alliance and cooperating to maintain a free and open Indo-Pacific region. The 2 leaders are likely to have discussed China's increasing maritime activities and North Korea's ballistic missile launches, and to have reaffirmed that they'll keep working closely together on those issues. Next to Ukraine. U.S. President Biden has said Russia seems likely to invade its neighbor, and he warned of the consequences. With tensions now at a fever pitch, top diplomats from Washington and Moscow have held talks to seek ways to cool things down. About 100,000 Russian soldiers have massed along the border with Ukraine. The U.S. and its allies are demanding the soldiers pull back, but the Russians want a promise that NATO will never admit Ukraine as a member. To address the issue, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken sat down with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov.
What we expect today are concrete answers to our concrete proposals.
We are, all of us, equally committed to the path of diplomacy and dialogue to try to resolve our differences. But we're also committed, if that proves impossible, and Russia decides to pursue aggression against Ukraine, to a united, swift, and severe response.
The two diplomats played down expectations for the meeting. They said a single discussion is unlikely to resolve their differences. But Blinken said he hopes the two sides can test whether the path of diplomacy through dialogue remains open. Lavrov called the talks constructive and useful. He told reporters that the U.S. agreed to provide written responses to Russian demands on Ukraine and NATO next week.
The United States and our European allies and partners are prepared to pursue possible means of addressing them in a spirit of reciprocity, which means, simply put, that Russia must also address our concerns. There are several steps that we can take, all of us, Russia included.
Blinken said the two sides will seek further diplomatic discussion after sharing the concerns of the U.S. and its allies in writing next week. But he reiterated that it's really up to Russia to decide which path it'll pursue, diplomacy that can lead to peace and security, or a path that'll lead only to conflict. Now to the coronavirus situation in Japan, where quasi-emergency measures are now in effect in Tokyo and 15 other prefectures as the Omicron variant storms through the population. More than 49,000 new infections were confirmed nationwide on Friday. Tokyo reported 9,699 new cases, a record high for the third day running. 31.5% of the hospital beds in Tokyo set aside for COVID patients are currently occupied.
If their occupancy rate reaches 50%, I will consider asking the central government to declare a state of emergency for Tokyo.
In Setagaya Ward, officials are handing out free antigen test kits to residents. This elderly couple say they want to get tested before looking after their grandchild.
We appreciate the free tests because there aren't any at the local drugstore.
Intensive measures to stop the spread of coronavirus are now in place in 16 prefectures. Several prefectures, including Hokkaido and 3 in the Kansai region, have asked the central government to authorize tougher restrictions for their jurisdictions. Meanwhile, U.S. personnel at American military outposts in Japan are to stay on their bases until the end of the month. They were to be confined to base until next Monday, but the Japanese and U.S. governments agreed to extend the order. Countries are rushing aid to Tonga, hit by a huge undersea volcanic eruption and tsunami. Cargo planes carrying supplies from New Zealand and Australia landed on Thursday. More ships and flights are on the way. The two countries' aircraft brought drinking water, communications equipment, and other supplies. Vessels from New Zealand's Navy have also arrived. They're checking damage to the port to see if ships can dock safely to deliver aid. New Zealand's Foreign Ministry has provided an update on the situation. It says some communities on the island where the capital is located have lost access to drinking water. The ministry says there is a possibility of another eruption, but it would not likely be as large as the one on January 15th. Tonga's authorities say that eruption killed 3 people and left many injured. In neighboring Fiji, an official from the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies said their team has begun distributing relief goods. The items were stockpiled in Tonga and are destined for affected households.
Our team is supporting initial response in providing, this relief items, so just to get them, the initial response to get them to get life, to move back, life back to normal as they, as they clear their homes, they get used to drinking water from containers that have been distributed.
IFRC says securing access to drinking water and repairing homes are the main priorities. Next, we have a story about a man with incredible luck and fortitude. The 57-year-old Tongan was washed away in the tsunami last week. He says he survived nearly 27 hours at sea. Lisala Folau was living on Atata Island, 7 kilometers from the main island Tangatapu. He told Reuters of his amazing story on Friday. He said that after he was swept away, he sank beneath the waves many times. He thought he was done for. But when he came up for the 9th time, he managed to grab onto a log. Folau says he couldn't use his legs much because of a disability, so he had to rely entirely on his arms to stay afloat. He says he was terrified, but belief in God pulled him through. He finally reached the shore of Tangatapu on Sunday evening. His home island was reportedly almost entirely destroyed by the tsunami. The biggest party in Thailand's ruling coalition has removed its Secretary General and 20 other lawmakers. It may land as another blow to the administration of Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha. The pro-military Palang Pracharat party made an announcement about the shakeup on Thursday. It said the members were expelled for making demands that threatened party unity. Local media say Secretary General Tamanat Prampao may have had a tense relationship with the Prime Minister. He was formerly a deputy agriculture minister, but he was removed from cabinet last year, accused of trying to vote against the Prime Minister in a no-confidence move. Following the expulsion, the party will have fewer seats in the lower house. If the ousted group turns to the opposition, the gap between the two sides will narrow significantly. The Prime Minister denies he has plans for a cabinet reshuffle or a dissolution of parliament anytime soon. But one analyst says Prayut's diminished base weakens his hold on parliament and government. This comes ahead of a general election scheduled for next year. Prayut led a military coup in 2014 and continued on as Prime Minister after a general election 3 years ago. He has faced repeated anti-government protests. He's been criticized for mishandling the pandemic response and being slow to secure vaccine supplies. The Beijing Winter Olympics torch relay will be closed to the public to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. Officials said the relay will run from February 2nd to the 4th in Beijing and neighboring Zhangjiakou in Hubei province. It will not be held on public roads. About 1,200 torchbearers will participate. The route will cover some popular spots, including the Great Wall. A limited number of spectators will be allowed to watch the event. All the torchbearers must be vaccinated and tested for the virus.
The Olympics will start in just 14 days. I'm very excited. I hope Chinese athletes get excellent results.
I like watching curling. It's funny because players look like they're cleaning.
The Olympic flame will be lit at the opening ceremony on February 4th. The games will be held without spectators from the general public. People in Madagascar's capital city are dealing with the aftermath of heavy rain, which resulted in flooding, and more stormy weather is headed for the northern part of the country. Our meteorologist Sayaka Mori has the details in World Weather.
Hello there. Earlier this week, Antananarivo and surrounding areas had heavy rainfall that led to flooding and landslides that killed at least 10 people. And we are still seeing heavy rainfall because a cyclone is approaching. A possible cyclone is approaching. The system could make landfall in the northern areas of Madagascar on Sunday. That could lead to more flooding out there. But the south of Madagascar has been dealing with severe drought. Hopefully, rain will improve the situation. Antananarivo could see a chance for thunderstorms on Saturday with a high of 24 degrees. Sunny weather in Johannesburg with a high of 23. Meanwhile, ample moisture from the Pacific has been affecting parts of Alaska. In fact, for the next couple of days, some areas could see about 200 millimeters of rainfall. Juneau will see temperatures about 5 degrees higher than normal for this time of year thanks to the southerly winds. So snow melt and additional rain could lead to severe flooding out there. Snow has been piling up on the Sea of Japan side of Japan, and Kyoto had 14 centimeters of snowfall on Friday. That was the heaviest in 5 years. Take a look at this video. A blast of winter weather hit the ancient capital Kyoto on Friday. Heavy snow fell at Ginkakuji, one of the temples that are located along the eastern mountains of the city. Higher elevations of Kyoto Prefecture saw more than a meter of snow on the ground. Heavy snow warnings had to be issued in the prefecture. Snow will likely be easing into the weekend over the Sea of Japan side, but there is a chance for heavy snowfall once again in Tokyo on Tuesday. Sapporo could see sub-zero temperatures once again on Saturday, but weather will improve starting on Sunday, and then even the sun will come out next week. That's it for me. Have a nice weekend.